Video for assignment 67, math lesson 9.5. In our last lesson we talked about the area of rectangles. Today we're going to extend that into parallelograms and triangles. Now, if you had to find the area of this rectangle, what would you do? You could either think about how many square boxes cover the whole shape, how many across times how many rows, or you could use the formula base times height. The base is 1, 2, 3, 4. The height is 2. 4 times 2 gives you the answer 8 inches squared. Well, how would you make a rectangle if you were looking at this parallelogram? If you imagine that chunk there off that side and fit onto this side, now we have a rectangle, right? And to find the area of a rectangle, we do base times height. So it would be 4 times 2, 8. See how I imagined this piece? Well, parallelograms work that way. That's how we can find the area of a parallelogram. Okay, so think about this rectangle and this parallelogram. Rectangles and parallelograms with the same base and the same height have the same area. So to find the area for a parallelogram, we just take the base times the height, just like we do for rectangle. And it works because you can imagine that extra piece here cut off and inserted over here. It's always going to work with a parallelogram. Now, one thing you want to be careful of is how you're measuring your height. Because remember, the height is measured from one base to the opposite side. And it needs to move at a square, it needs to be a perpendicular line. You cannot measure the height going up this slant. That's not the height. The height is from the base straight up across to the other side. In your notebooks, in the last lesson, I had you start a page with the topic area formulas. I want you to go to that page right now, and I want you to add parallelogram. We've got rectangle in there. Well, now we're going to put parallelograms in there. I'm going to say parallelograms. Okay, write that down in your notes. It's the same formula. Now, let's talk about triangles. Can you find the area of these triangles? Well, it says click on the triangles for a hint, so let's try that. Does that give you a hint? Let's click on this one. You can see here that if we took this triangle and we kind of like flipped it over, we would make the other half of this rectangle here. So 2 triangles make the whole rectangle. Knowing that, how could you find the area of the triangle? Or this one here, if we take this triangle and we flip it over, we have made a whole parallelogram. So 2 triangles make the whole parallelogram. How would we find the area? Well, if you're thinking that we could take the base times the height, so it would be 3 times 3, 9 inches squared would be the area of this whole rectangle. But the triangle only takes up half of that. So we need to take the area of this whole rectangle and divide it by 2. Okay, we want to take half of that. So half of 9 is 4.5. So our area of this triangle here would be 4.5 inches squared. Now how about this one over here? It is half of the whole parallelogram. Well, we learned that the area of parallelograms is the same as the area of rectangles, base times height. So we could find the area of the whole parallelogram. Our base is 2. Our height, now we have to be careful when we measure that height. It's got to go from the base straight to the highest point here, or what would be the opposite side, right? So the height is 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got a base of 2 and a height of 4. So the area of this parallelogram is 2 times 4, or 8 inches squared. But this triangle is half that much. So we want to take half of our 8, or in other words, divide by 2. So the area of this triangle would be 4 inches squared. That's pretty cool, isn't it? So what is the relationship between the area of a triangle and the area of a parallelogram? The area of a triangle is half the area of a parallelogram. Now keep in mind, a parallelogram, rectangles and squares are also parallelograms, okay? We don't usually call them parallelograms because they're a little bit more special than that with their right angles, but they are. So it works the same. The area of a triangle is half the area of a parallelogram that those dimensions would make. Is every triangle half of a parallelogram? Yeah, it is. Okay. You can take every triangle and flip it over and you will make a parallelogram with it. Okay. So every triangle is half of a parallelogram that has the same dimensions. Sometimes those parallelograms end up being rectangles or squares, like if you have a triangle that has a right angle. But usually it'll just be like a parallelogram. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So because of that, since we know that the area of a parallelogram is base times height, the area of a triangle is going to be half as much as that. Half times base times height. Another way of looking at that formula is base times height divided by 2. So on your area formulas page in your notebook, we need to add the formula for triangle. Okay, so write this down. Triangle. Area equals base times height divided by 2. Now, make sure you've got the formulas for parallelograms and triangles added to your page. Here's the triangle, and one last time, the parallelograms formula is area equals base times height.